Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Principles of Macroeconomics. Today, we come to the chapter 2, Thinking Like an Economist. In this chapter, we will look into the following questions. What are economists' two roles? How do they differ? Second, what are models? How do economists use them? Third, what are the elements of the circular flow diagram? What concept does the diagram illustrate? Fourth, how is the production possibilities frontier related to opportunity cost? What other concepts does it illustrate? Fifth, what is the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics, between positive and normative statement? Okay, let's get started. So the economists normally play two roles. First is scientist. They try to explain the world. Second is a policy advisors. They try to improve it. So those two roles are actually the two sides of the same coin. So consider that if you uh, if you want to make a policy recommendation, it is impossible for you to do so if you have no understanding about the real world. But at the same time, if you do not trying to improve it, why do you need to understand the world, right? So those two roles are actually uh, highly associated with each other. Now we come to we start with the first role. As scientists, economists employ the scientific method. They dispassionate development and testing of theories about how the world works. And then they devise theories, collect data, and analyze this data to verify or refute their theories. So the first part is development. The second part is evaluation. The scientific method in the economics follow the following framework. So first is observation. We need to observe how the economy works. So it includes the collection and the analysis of data. And then based on our observation, we can come up with some of the pattern, right? We can find some pattern in the data. Based on those patterns, we can develop a theory based on the observed data. You can consider a theory as an organized pattern that people observe in the data. Then in the third part, we need more observation to evaluate the validity of the theory. The difficult part of the macroeconomics is that we cannot use laboratory experiment because it is almost impossible to replicate the society because it has so many moving parts in it. In the economy, maybe you have a billions of population, and each population have multiple roles, so it is quite impossible to replicate. So as an economist, we need to pay close attention to the natural experiments offered by history. So if we want to get more understanding about the current recession, it is very hard for us to come up with a lab with all the people in it and do the experiment of a recession. Instead, we look into all the recessions in the history. So, is there any commonality of all those recessions? If we pay attention to those commonalities, is it possible for us to avoid those recessions? Right. So this kind of analysis, we call that natural experiments. So it is not an experiment implemented in the lab. It is the experiment implemented in the real world. So the natural experiment have less restrictions. So it is not that costly for you to set up the entire environment, but it also have a drawback. All the recessions are different. So it is impossible for you to get the exactly same environment in all the setting. So you need to the natural experiment actually put more emphasis on people's analytic skills. So you need to find the commonalities and actually exclude the impact of those factors that are not the same for those different recessions. So how do economists come up with a theory? So normally economists make assumptions and use a model to simplify the environment and to simplify the the setting of their of the story they want to tell. Right? The economists make the assumptions. The assumptions simplify the complex world and make it easier to understand. So what is assumption? A good example is a rational people, right? So in this world, a lot of people have a goal, but for a lot of and some individuals don't even have a goal. But then the economist said, we do not really want to pay attention to those who don't have a goal. We only want to look at the people who have a goal and go toward it. So in that sense, the economist make an assumption. All the people are rational. So this make all the individual in the society to be homogeneous. In other words, they make all the individual in the society to be exactly the same. So it is much easier to extract the commonality among all those individuals, right? So assumption will greatly simplify the environment that you trying to explain. After you make the assumptions, the economists use the models to tell the story. So the models omit many details to allow us to see what is truly important and are built with assumptions. So a good example of the model is cost and benefit analysis, right? So in this model, we do not really care about who the individual is. We just have two simple rules. If one individual have if you increase the cost of one decision, the individual become less likely to take that decision. If you increase the benefit of that actions, then the individual is more likely to take that actions. So in this is a very simple model, but in this model, you do not really know who that individual is. And in that situation, you don't even know what environment that individual is. But you just leave all the necessary element in this model. So in that model, the element of concern is that individual, and that individual need to get two pieces of information. One is cost and the other one is a benefit. After they get those two pieces of information, they can make almost all the decision that they need. All right. So this is a model that is developed on the simplifying assumption. So the model actually simplifies the reality to improve our understanding of it. All models are subject to revision. All right. There's no model is perfect because there's no assumption to be perfect. Right. If you make an assumption that all the people are rational, there definitely some people are irrational. So in the financial market, there's a lot of irrational behavior. So in the financial market, all those economic theory developed based on the rational assumption do not really hold in the financial market, right? So all the models are subject to the revision to the updated environment, right? So for the economic model, an easy way to illustrate the economic model is to draw a circular flow diagram. It is a visual model for the economy. For the economy, it shows how dollars flow through markets among households and firms. It shows how all the individuals in the economy interact with each other. So we can start with the most basic one, with two decision makers, firms and households. So they are the agents or the participant in these economies. Then we can introduce the key element for the interaction of those two individuals, which are the two markets. One market is the market for goods and services. The other market is for the factors of production, which are inputs. So the first part is to lay out the two individuals. So after we get the individuals, we use a bubble around it to indicate the key characteristics or key features of that individual agent. So like a household, they own and sell the factors of production. And second, they buy and consume goods and services, right? So this is their role. And then for the firms, they hire and use factors of production. So they are the person, they are the individual who get the. So when you lay out the key economic participant, and then you can start the next step. So how do those market participants interact with each other? So here we just introduce two markets. So one market is for the goods and the services. So this is a market for the good and service that is produced in the economy. Another market is for the factors of production. This is the input for the production. So the market for the good and service is a place that all those GNS are bought and sold. The sellers will be the firms because they are the one who produce. The buyers will be the household because they need those good and service in order to sustain their living and get some utilities. As to the market for the factor of production, it is a place where the inputs are bought and sold. The seller will be a household because they are the owner of all those factors. Those factors may include the labor and the capital. The buyers will be the firm because the firm requires those resources for the production. And then after we specified everything, then we can put those all the elements into this circular flow form diagram. So for the relate, we can connect all the elements within this diagram using some of the red arrows. Those red arrows specify the flow of the money or the flow of the resources, right? So let me give you an example. So how does the household interact with the market for goods and service? So you can see that there is a red arrow points to the market. So it says the spending. So the household spend the money to the market, and in exchange they get the good and service bought, right? So the household give out their income or their resources, and then in exchange they get good and service. Then how does the firms interact with this good and service market? They sell all those good and service that are produced by the firm. In exchange, they will get the revenue, right? So all those arrows illustrate the flow of the resources, right? So this is a very illustrative way to understand the functionality of the entire economy, right? So later on, you can add more market into this diagram. You can also add more market participant. For example, as to the market, you can include the financial market. You can include the labor market. you can include capital market, so on and so forth. Then as to the market participant, you can add the government, you can add financial intermediaries, you can also add maybe a Federal Reserve or maybe a central planner. So you can expand this diagram and make it increasingly complicated and in order to satisfy your analytic goal, right? So this is just a very simple version, but it have a huge potential for you in the future. So you can use it to understand the economy by yourself. You can also use this kind of diagram to show other people how the economy works. The next tool that I would like to introduce to you is the production possibilities frontier. So this is the PPF is a very handy tool to illustrate um, um, the possibility for your production. So it is a graph that shows various combinations of output so that the economy can possibly produce given the available factors of production and the available production technology. So the PPF is used to illustrate the thing that one individual or specifically one firm can produce. So let's look at one example so it will be much easier to understand. So we assume the following. A country produce only two goods, okay, airplanes and soybeans. It has a fixed amount of resources, which is labor. So now we only consider one production input. So in the real world, maybe we need to put in the capital, maybe we need to put in other kind of resources. But here, for the simplicity, we assume that the production only need the labor. And it have a fixed amount and quantity of technology. So the technology is given and is already fixed. So we do not consider the technological advancement over time. All right. So it is a static model. In our word, we do not consider the change over time. All right. Fourth, the available resources and technology can be used to produce only soybeans. So if the entire economy produce the soybeans, the maximum capacity is 5,000 tons. If all the resources used to produce airplanes, that will be 100 airplanes. And then if a country want to produce a combination of soybeans and airplanes, so you can definitely do so. So here we can list all the possible combination of the product that this individual country can produce. So you can see that if you produce more airplane, then your production of the soybean will become less. So if you want to produce more soybean from D to C, then you can see the production of the airplane will decrease. So here is exactly what we talk about. The trade-off, right? So those two things. If you want to get something that you want, you need to sacrifice the alternative. These are just a few of the possible production combinations. So to increase the production of airplanes from 0 to 20, how many tons of soybeans do we have to give up? So we can look at airplane from A to B. From A to B, it is an increase of 20 airplane. Then you can see there's a decrease of 1,000 tons of soybeans. So this is how you read this graph. You can also look at the D and E. So from D to E, it is also a 20 an increase of 20 airplanes. Then you can also see there's a decrease of production of soybeans for 1,000 tons. So the answer to this question is 1,000. So based on the information that we get at here, we can actually point out those points on a two-dimensional graph, and a better part is that we can connect all those dots in order to form a straight line. So that straight line tells us what are the combination of good and service that can be produced by these countries. So in this two-dimensional graph, on the horizontal axis is the soybeans, and the vertical axis is the airplanes. So then you may ask, can I use a horizontal axis for the airplanes? So yes, definitely you can do that, right? So you just need to make sure that for each individual production, you need to allocate one axis for them. So if you have three different products, then you need to have a three-dimensional graph. Right. First, you draw the point A, because A is the easiest way, is the easiest point that you can draw, because the airplane production is 0, so it is a point exactly on the x-axis. Then you can draw the E. Then you draw all the dot in between. Then you connect all those dots. So here, in this simple examples, all the dot actually connect into a straight line, but it is not always the case. So sometimes it may be a curve. Okay, it may be a curve, but here for simplicity is a straight line. Straight line means that the trade-off between those two productions are linear, or the exchange rate between those two things are always the same, So how to read this graph? Okay, so in this graph we can see there are three different situations. One is that if a dot that is land on the on this straight line, so we call that efficient point. So in those situations, the economy is getting all it can from the scarce resources available. Those are the point on the PPF. So for all the points on this PPF, you can get two things. First, they already used up all the currently available resources. Second, it is feasible for the economy to produce that combination. So that is what we call efficient. Then we also have inefficient levels of production. Those are the point that lays inside of the PPF. So, for example, if we have a point at here, so can you produce this level? Definitely, you can produce 50 airplane and 1,000 tons of soybeans. You can definitely produce at that level. But is it efficient? In other words, do you actually use up all the currently available resources? Maybe not. How can you tell? If you want to produce more airplane, can you do that? You can actually produce 30 more airplane without any sacrifice to the production of soybean. And then for the soybean, you can produce like 1,500 more tons of soybeans without sacrificing the production of any airplane. So in this case, you still have some resources left. So you actually waste some of the resources that you can deploy. So that is why we call all the point that is within this PPF as inefficient points. All right. Then lastly, we also have the points that is outside of the PPF. We call those as a unattainable point, or not or the points that are not feasible. So why? Because let's consider this. If there's a point that is outside of the point D and C, so for this point, it is outside of a PPF. So let's compare this point to the point D. All right. So point D is a situation where the individual or is an individual already used up all their currently available resources. But compare with this point with D, you need to produce 1,500 tons of soybeans. So this individual country do not have that resources. So in that case, this point is unattainable. And it is the same case for the production of the airplane. So compare with the point C. Point C is already the efficient point where all the resources are used up. Then if you want to produce 30 airplanes, then it is you don't have the resources to deploy in order to produce that 30 more airplanes. All right, so that is why they are unattainable. Okay. All right, so this is a PPF. PPF is a very handy tool to illustrate your combinations of the production. It can also show you what is your capacity of the production. All right, let's look at one example. So and here I would strongly encourage you to have a pen and paper to do it by yourself. All right. So use a graph from the previous example. Would it be possible for the economy to produce the following combinations of the two goods? Point F, 80 airplanes and 4,000 tons of soybeans. Let's see. 80 is here. 4,000 is here. So if you make a connection of those two quantity, then you will get a point at here. So it is a point, it is definitely outside of the PPF. So it is unattainable. So it means that for the currently available resources, you cannot get this amount of production. Then we look at the point G, 30 airplanes and 2,500 tons. 30 is here. 30 is somewhere here, and the 2,500. So it will be a point around here. So you can see that for the point C is a level of a production that you can produce for this level of the so at that level, you can see that for the point C, it is a place that you will exhaust all the resources. So you can produce 50 airplane if you only produce 2,500 tons of soybean. So then you definitely have enough resources to produce 30 units of airplane. But here at this point, it is inefficient. Inefficient means that you still have some resources that is wasted, right? So F is unattainable, while the G is attainable. Right. So we can also look at what if there's a move along the PPF. So it will involve the shifting resources from the production of one good to the other, and this kind of move will follow the principle of the trade-off or the principle of the scarce resources. So if you want to get something, you always need to sacrifice the other one. So the society faces a trade-off. Getting more of one good requires sacrificing some of the others. So that is why the slope of the PPF is like this. It is the opportunity cost of one good in terms of the others. So if you want to increase one unit of one good, you need to sacrifice. You need to reduce the production of certain unit of the other good. So that actually leads to the downward sloping of the PPF. So let's look at how the PPF can make the opportunity cost so illustrative. All right. So you can get the opportunity cost directly from the graph, right? So let's look at the change from the E to D. So to produce the first 1,000 tons of soybeans, you need to sacrifice 20 airplanes. So that is what we can get from the E to D, right? The airplane reduce 20 unit, the soybean increase the production by 1,000 tons. So the opportunity cost of one airplane is actually equal to 1,000 tons of soybean divided by 20. Divided by 20. So in that case, it will be 500. 20. Yeah, so that will be 50 ton. Then we look at the opportunity cost of the soybeans. So the 20 airplanes will change for 1,000 ton of soybeans. So for each ton of soybeans, you can get 20 divided by 20 divided by 1,000 airplane. So that will be 1/50. 1/50. So it's 0.02. So if you sacrifice the opportunity cost of 1 ton of soybean is 0.02 airplane. Right. So with additional resources or an improvement in technology, the economy can produce more of either the product or both of the product. So you can maybe there's a advancement in the technology of producing soybeans. So you can extend the PPF on the soybean axis, and then you can also extend the axis for the airplane because of a new technology in producing airplanes. And then or maybe there's any combination in between. So if there's new technology to enhance the overall productivity of the entire society. So for example, a better education levels, so it will enhance the production of all the products. So it will be a kind of parallelly expansion of the entire PPF. So the shape of the PPF is not always a straight line. So when it is a straight line, it means if it is a straight line, it means a constant opportunity cost. So in the previous example, the opportunity cost of one airplane is always 50 tons of soybeans, and this exchange rate is keep constant for the entire PPF. But sometimes we also have the bold outward PPF. So it means increasing opportunity cost. So in other words, as more unit of a good are produced, we need to give up increasing amount of the other good produced. So let's look at one example of that. So as the economy shifts resources from beer to mountain bikes, the PPF becomes steeper and the opportunity cost of mountain bikes increase. So to illustrate that point, so we can look at two situations. At point A, the opportunity cost of mountain bike is low. So it means that if you want to get more unit of the mountain bike, you only need to sacrifice a very small amount of production of beer. So you can see that the reduction of the production of beer is relatively small, right? But at the point B, when the production of the mountain bikes become higher, then most workers are producing the bike. The few left in beer production are the best brewers. So when most of the resources are allocated to produce a mountain bike, then there are all the as a point B, maybe those people, those individuals who good at producing beer actually need to come to produce a bike, but they are not really good at it. So in that case, the opportunity cost of producing the mountain bike will be very high. So you can see that the reduction of the beer uh, will is in a larger magnitude compared with the situation in the point A, right? But the increase of the production of the mountain bike are exactly the same, right? So the opportunity cost is getting higher and higher when the production of certain good become larger, right? So that will lead to this kind of bold outward the PPF. So the PPF is bold outward when different workers have different skills. So here we are not really consider one individual workers. Instead, we consider a group of workers. So each individual worker have a different specialities in producing those two goods. So there are different opportunity costs of producing one good in terms of the others. There is some other resources or mix of resources with varying opportunity cost. For example, the different types of land suited for different use, right? All those this kind of heterogeneity, in other words, this kind of a difference across all the individuals within the group actually will lead to this bold outward PPF. So when you produce when you produce any given good at the beginning, those people who good at producing this good will come to this field. And later on, some people who are not really good producing this good are forced to come to here. So the gain of the productivity are different for those different individuals. All right. The next part is to tell the difference between the microeconomics and macroeconomics. So for the microeconomics, it is a study of households and firms make decisions and how they interact in markets. For the macroeconomics, it is a study of economy-wide phenomena, including inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. All right. So this is a definition. So how can you tell the difference? All right. So it is based on the perspective. So if you want to do some analysis of the individual's decision making, that is a microeconomics. So for any individual's decision, it is in the scope of microeconomics. So this individual can be one household. It can also be one firm. All right. So for the firm, what will be the good pricing strategy? What will be the optimal level of production? So that is the microeconomic problem. And then for the household, should I how much money I need to save in my bank account compared with my income? That is also a study of the microeconomics. Then for the macroeconomics, it is about the decision of the group of people. So what does that mean? So consider we have a group of firms, all right? So for each individual firm, they will make their own price decision. So that price decision is a microeconomic problem. Then if we want to know what is the general price level of this group of firm, then that is a macroeconomic problems, all right? So if we want to know the aggregate behavior of a group of individual, that is always falls into the category of the macroeconomics. So let's look at those examples. The inflation. So the inflation is the price level, is the overall price level of all the goods and service available in the society. Unemployment, it is not about the job decision of one individual. Instead, it is overall employment situation in the economy. And then the economic growth is the overall increase of the production of all the firms within the economy. Yeah. Well, here we already almost finished the part that the economists are scientists. So the economists try to explain the causes of economic events and try to use a positive statements. And then for as an economist as a policy advisor, they will recommend policies to improve economic outcomes. So that would include the understanding of what's happening, and it also includes the value judgments about what ought to be done. And in that part, it will use a normative statement. So what are the difference between the positive and normative statement? So for the positive statement, it is more descriptive. So the attempt to describe the world as is. So it confirm or refute by examining evidence. For example, minimum wage laws cause unemployment. So it is a positive statement. It is trying to describe what happened. For the normative statement, it is a prescriptive. Normally, it includes some opinion. So it try to attempt to prescribe how the work should be. So, for instance, the government should raise the minimum wage. So for the positive, it is a statement of the fact, but for the normative one, it is normally related with the opinion. All right. So as a scientist, the economists need to use a positive statement to describe what happened in the world, but as a policy advisor, sometimes we need to use a normative statement to make the recommendations. So here are at least some examples, and I would like to ask you to evaluate whether they are positive or normative, and how can you tell the difference? So the first one is prices rise when the government increases the quantity of money, right? So in this situation, it is just talk about the observed relationship between the price and the quantity of money. It doesn't actually have an opinion, individual's opinion. So that is a positive statement. B, the government should print less money. So whenever there's a word should or ought to or supposed to, so it is definitely a normative statement. C, a tax cut is needed to stimulate the economy. So actually here, the wording uh, um, is not as strong as the previous one. However, it is also a kind of suggestions. So for the D, an increase in the price of burritos will cause an increase in consumer demand for movie streaming. So here have no. So the D is a positive statement. Right. So for the economists as policy advisors, you can always find a job related with that. So in the government, there are the council of the economic advisors. They advise the president about the economic matters. They write the annual economic report of the president. You can also find a job as an economist as the Office of Management and Budget for most of the firm. It will help formulate spending plans and regulatory policies. You can also find economists at the Department of the Treasuries. It will help design tax policies. So in all kind of government agency and department, they need to hire the economist to make all those policy recommendations. Then there are more places that you can find a job as an economist, such as the Department of Labor, Department of Justice, Congressional Budget Office, and the Federal Reserve. So, so why the economist's advice is often not followed? Okay, so the economist is one of the important source of information for the decision maker, but it is not the only source of information. So, for example, if you look at the cabinet or or the advisory group for the president, it normally comprise of several important personnel. The first one is first group is an economist. Second, communication advisors. So how do you form this public relationship? Third, press advisors. So how do you communicate with the general public? Fourth, legislative affairs advisors. So is there any legal issues? Lastly, it's a political advisors. So it is related with the partisanship and the political concerns. So the president need to make the decision based on all those informations. And we also need to notice that the economists often give conflicting policy advice. They may disagree about the validity of alternative positive theories about the world. They may have different values and therefore different normative views about what policy should try to accomplish. So for the economist, it's a job to provide a different opinion. If all the economists think the same, so in that sense, there's no role for the economist. So actually, it is a good thing that economists do not agree with each other. So yet there are many propositions about which most economists agree. So here are some expert opinion. So first, the laws that limit the resale of tickets for entertainment and sports events may make potential audience members for those events worse off on average. So you will find that 8% disagree and 12% are uncertain about it, but 80% agree. So in this case, we consider maybe there's a consensus among economists in this matter. So there's always some disagreement, but we normally use a rule of the majority. Another reason why the economists disagree is because of the difference in scientific judgments. Different economists have different hunches about the validity of alternative theories, and they have different judgments about the size of the parameters that measure how economic variables are related. There are differences in values of political philosophies. So there are so many differences in each individual's mindset mindset. So it is quite normal for the disagreement. No matter what, the main purpose for having all those economists is not to get a kind of a consensus view. Instead, we want to know the difference in the opinion, and we also want to know what the majority thinks about. So here is a brief review of what we have learned. So the economists take two roles. First is scientist. The other one is the policy advisors. In the first role, economists make appropriate assumptions and build simplified models. You can use the circular flow diagram and the production possibility frontiers to make the illustration easier. Microeconomists study decision-making by household, firms, and their interactions in the marketplace. So the microeconomists look at the decision-making of all the individuals. The macroeconomists instead study the forces and trends that affect the economy as a whole. So it looks at the aggregate behavior of a group of individuals. Then we also introduce the concept of the positive and normative statement. A positive statement is a description of the fact. The normative statement it's normally include some of the recommendations. The economists sometimes offer conflicting advices, but it is not really a huge problem. It only reflects the differences in scientific judgments and differences in values. So we always need to see through this kind of disagreement and find and get the insight about the commonalities among all those advices. So sometimes economists are united in the advice they offer, but policymakers may choose to ignore the advice because of the many forces and constraints imposed on them by the political process, right? So the economic is not all the concerns that the policymaker need to be careful about. So they have a matrix of the issues they need to pay attention to. Okay, this is the end of the chapter 2. So in this chapter, we talk about what does the economist do, and hopefully it can give you a better idea about what can you do after you get a degree or claim a major in the economics. Thank you for listening and hope to see you in the next chapter.